Ahoy, mateys, and welcome to another episode of I'm Ready, a SpongeBob SquareCast. My name is Captain Eric, and we are continuing our sail through the second season of SpongeBob SquarePants. Let's jump right into it, ladies and gentlemen, this week in Nickelodeon history.
Nickelodeon. Nickelodeon.
Now, this first entry is going to seem a little weird because I don't know who to believe. I trust Nickelodeon, but in my research, I can't double check on this. So the other day on the Nick Rewind Instagram, which they will usually post up like this day in Nickelodeon history and important moments and whatnot, but they said, on this day in 1995, we met Ed from Good Burger, which was January 28th, 1995. So I was like, oh, this is great. We're gonna talk about Good Burger here and the history of all that and whatnot. And bam, I go and look to see if I can find the episode. And any of the information I can find is that the episode that aired on January 28th of 1995 does not feature Good Burger. And in fact, at this point in the show, they've already had two Good Burger sketches. The first one being right in episode 2, and which aired on December 24th, 1994, and the second Good Burger sketch aired on January 14th, 1995. So this is tough. I don't want to call Nickelodeon a liar or whoever's running the Nick Rewind Instagram page, but I mean, we are close. We are still past 26 years since we've met Ed from Good Burger. And of course, I don't want to rob myself of talking about Good Burger because later on in the year, we'll obviously talk about the movie and the debut of all that and the debut of Good Burger. But yeah, if just either way, last December it was 26 years since we first met Ed. Definitely one of the biggest All That sketch of all time. It's not even one of, it is the biggest All That sketch of all time. Definitely has a history. To this day, Good Burger is still usually in the top 10 watched movies on Netflix. It resonates that much with the generation that grew up with it. It's such just a lovable franchise, a lovable character, a lovable story. There's something about it that's magical, and it worked on so many levels, which is why eventually they would make a movie. But yeah, 26 years ago, in the last month or so, we've met Ed. 11 years ago, on January 25th, 2010, Team Umizoomi premiered on Nick Jr., followed by a year later, on January 24th, 2011, Bubble Guppies premiered on Nickelodeon on Nick Jr. Bubble Guppies is still going on, surprisingly. It's about to hit 100 episodes. It has a 5th season, and last year it was already renewed for a 6th season, so congratulations to the team over at Bubble Guppies. They seem to have captured something. I've only seen glimpses of the show a few times. I've never actually sat down and watched it. I know of it, but it was actually shocking to see that it was not only still going on, but up there in the episode count. Congratulations, guys. 5 years ago, on February 1st, 2016, Paradise Run premiered on Nickelodeon and is a reality competition. I have never watched this show. It ran for 3 seasons and 70 episodes, so it looked like it was a fairly popular show. 1 year ago, on January 24th, 2020, The Crystal Maze debuted on Nickelodeon. Now, The Crystal Maze is a British game show that ran for a couple seasons, or a couple series, over in the UK, hosted by Richard O'Brien, the brilliant writer of the Rocky Horror Picture Show, and of course, was also Riff Raff in the original movie. This was brought over to America and kind of done as an adaptation, hosted by Adam Conover, known by the show Adam Ruins Everything over on True TV, and it seemed like a very fun concept. I've only seen clips of the show. It wrapped up its American run in March 2020, so only lasted a few months. And I don't know if it's coming back. I haven't seen anything that says it's returning, but it doesn't say it's canceled, so it looks like there's more episodes coming to Nickelodeon at some point. But yeah, that has been this week's This History Nickelodeon, a very short segment this time, due to the fact that it seemed like a lot of shows did not want to premiere or end their episodes in the end of January, and nothing other really big to talk about other than Ed there, which, like I said, like literally right before recording, I was gung ho about that post on Nick Rewind, and then when I went to go look on the episodes, oh, that just messed me up. But hopefully one day we'll get to the bottom of this. I mean, it's going to be an ongoing mystery on this show. Which day did Ed really debut on?
Oh, Bikini Bottom, we pledge our hearts to you, as faithful, as deep, as true, as blue. Bikini Bottom, we love you.
Now, it's been exactly a week since we started doing interviews again for the SpongeBob SquarePants Movie Rehydrated that we are partnering with throughout the year. And I've had a ton of nice messages over the conversation I had with Challenger Girl. I really appreciate everybody who reached out and had some nice things to say. I've also had some nice things said about the new format. Now, being a commentary track, sometimes that can be very easy to quickly point out things and bring up trivia. But as I've mentioned before, I always felt that the conversations just kind of were forced more than being natural. And the best thing about a podcast is having a natural conversation and not making it feel forced. So I am not 100% on this new format. I'm still working on it and still fresh. This is the second time it's happened for me. So I appreciate everybody with their feedback about both the interview and the new format. And as we go on and continue forward, I would appreciate any more. This week, though, I'm having a conversation with Star Kingo, an animator on the project. And once again, another fantastic conversation. Somebody a little bit older who could reach from the same experiences, the same shows we watched, or encountering things at the same time, always can make for an easier conversation. But nonetheless, absolutely wonderful time talking to King here, and I hope you enjoy the interview as well. So sit back and relax as Star Kingo and I talk about art, Nicktoons, SpongeBob, and of course the episode Imitation Crabs.
Meatball, spaghetti underneath. Ravioli, Great Barrier Reef.
Now, I've known SpongeBob since the first time there was ever a commercial for the sponge. What is your very earliest memory of SpongeBob?
I know that. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say, like, that first moment you locked eyes on that character.
I believe it was a year into the show's running, because I was born a year after the show came out. I never got to see like any of the commercials or anything, but I know I saw the initial pilot episode and a couple of the others afterwards. And they always would do like reruns of the episodes a lot. And since we didn't get really that much cable, or it was like very rare for us to watch cartoons and things like that. So when SpongeBob would come on, that would be like the main cartoon we'd always watch all the time. And I've been a fan of the SpongeBob pretty much ever since then.
Oh, so I mean, you were growing up right there with SpongeBob. I mean, you were, I'm guessing, around like 3 or 4 years old when the first movie came out too.
Yeah, honestly, and I still love the movie. It's still one of my favorite movies of all time.
Well, of course, I would hope so, given the nature of the collab there. But you're an artist also on the collab. Speaking of which, did you find art as easy as you did like liking SpongeBob as a kid? Were you always into art?
It was more of a recent thing. Like a couple years ago, I finally got into art through other fandoms, but I've been recently trying to draw SpongeBob since it's been a big inspiration for me for like art and animation. And I just never gotten to try to draw the character before, or I always I got intimidated by the design because they say he's a simple square, but no, he is not.
I will tell you, as somebody who has been drawing SpongeBob since 1999, I know I have a pretty good SpongeBob that I can pull freehand, and people, anytime I pull that out, it's always an amazement for people to see that, and I always criticize it. I can see it's not perfect, and there's something about it. I don't know if I will ever feel like I've made a perfect SpongeBob, but there's just intricacies in his design that if you don't get him this exact way, it throws the whole thing off.
Yeah, and it makes it look weird, but I admire those who can really get close to the style, honestly. It's like, how the heck did you do that? Please teach me.
I admire those who can take the style and make different characters that feel like they belong into SpongeBob. That's something I've always looked up to and appreciated, but I've never been able to do it myself.
Yeah, I've been seeing like a couple Twitter artists who've even made their own like characters with the SpongeBob style, and I'm like, man, that looks really awesome. It looks like it could be part of the show.
So you said recently you got into animation. Did you dive headfirst into digital animation, or did you start maybe more traditional like pen and paper? Have you ever tried like making like a flip book or anything like that?
I've never tried traditional. I'm mostly into the digital animation side, and I've only been doing it for like 2 to 3 years, and I'm still learning a bit. And I still hope that one day I can do my own like fun little SpongeBob animations just for fun, just because it's a comfort cartoon, honestly. And I just like drawing certain characters from certain shows. Like, hey, I'm feeling down. Let's draw some SpongeBob, man.
That's probably speaking like you're absolutely right about SpongeBob being a comfort cartoon. I always have people ask me, they're like, out of everything you've ever watched, why SpongeBob? And I've never been able to really answer that question. But yeah, when I think of just comfort, it's like those classic Nicktoons I grew up with, including SpongeBob. Just always, no matter the worst day in the world, could not keep me from smiling when some of those characters are on the screen or certain episodes are on.
Yeah, especially the earlier seasons. I will admit that I haven't really kept up with the newer seasons. I hear that the current season's getting better, but season 6 through 9 really discouraged me, honestly.
Yeah, same. I have not had cable for the last. It'll be 6 years this fall, and even before that, when I had access to Nickelodeon, I wasn't keeping track up with newer SpongeBob because it was almost, I don't want to say depressing, but there was definitely such a dip in quality and character writing that just I was like, I can't really watch this. But I've seen clips from a lot of newer episodes, and they've at least made me chuckle, which is a good sign that when I eventually get to those episodes with this podcast, I'm sure I'll find something good with them.
Yeah, and I hear the original writers are back on, because season 6 through 9 had different writers and animators, and I've seen reviews of the certain episodes, and a lot of them are very concerning, to say the least.
I mean, I've seen some of the worst of the worst. Let's not forget the Splinter and freeze your face off, and episodes that just really make you go like, I understand new blood and new writers, but do these guys understand SpongeBob?
It's like, we don't need cartoon gore, thank you.
How has been your experience working with the collab? Have you ever worked with a group like this before, or even on a smaller project? Is this completely new territory for you?
The only other project that I've been on is the Eddsworld Reanimated, but that was a much smaller collab because it's like a smaller episode and it's just, it's Eddsworld. So this is the first bigger collab that I've been on, and I've been having a pretty good time. At least I've been having trouble with my part due to just that fear of, hey, what if this isn't as good as other people's parts? And other IRL things that have been happening as well, but I'm doing my best. And the fact that my icon, or no, my art is the actual icon of like on the Twitter and on the actual server, it actually makes me very happy.
Oh, congratulations on that! I had no clue about that.
Thank you.
I see that. I see your picture of SpongeBob literally every day of my life for the last like year. So thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
Look, I don't. And this is coming from somebody who does always self-doubt things. This podcast, the art I make myself, videos I'm working on. Like you're always your worst critic. But the best thing is, I think, when you can say it's finished and you can stand by it, even if you have those moments of like, I wish I could have done that differently. It's people's reactions will always help you feel like, wow, I really did a fantastic thing here, and you're definitely going to get that when this thing drops.
Yeah, I hope so, because I'm still in the animatic phase. Like, I'm almost getting to the rough animation. I'm still getting so discouraged. I'm trying my best, though.
No, keep your head up. I mean, for myself, I work better under pressure, so if I was an animator on this project, I probably wouldn't even start until like 2 months ahead. Too much ahead of release, I probably would work my best on that, because that forceness, like, you have to get this done, tends to give me better work than if I start in the beginning.
Yeah, fair enough. And honestly, I'm kind of the same, where it's like, I work better when it's like a closer deadline, like, oh no, I gotta hurry, man!
Is there, I mean, you would probably want to help reanimate every SpongeBob project. Is there anything outside of SpongeBob that you would like to take a crack at animating, or trying something.
Because I know I've done Eddsworld before, but I always want to try that again. And also, if they ever do any like Five Nights at Freddy's things, like if they do like any reanimated of like any of the games or anything, because that would be really fun too.
Oh man, Five Nights at Freddy's. I never played a game until I purchased Help Wanted because it seemed like the most accessible on the PlayStation 4. I don't really do a lot of PC gaming. But those first few games I could not get through. Like the second Foxy is introduced, I can't. It's like way too much for me to manage at that moment, and I've never mastered it. But I love the lore of those games. I love all of the game theory videos. Like that. That's what excites me about that series.
Honestly, same. And there's too many characters to even count. Too many Freddys, too many Bonnies. I mean, there's a chocolate Bonnie now. It's like,
Yeah, there's like this whole. I think on the AR game they've just added a ton of like offbeat characters that are now being made into action figures and toys. And I honestly, as someone who creates things as a creator, I'm so excited for Scott and his work to see it reach the heights that it did and hearing his story. And all in all, he seems like a really good guy. So anytime I see like a new step in the Five Nights at Freddy's world, it's like just congratulations to that guy because he's living the life right now.
yeah, honestly. And it's just nice to see that, like, certain creators, like, they start off, like, with these simple ideas, and then it just turns into something bigger than themselves, you know?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think about that. Like, it's not Five Nights at Freddy's wasn't this thing created by a company. It was one guy sitting in his house. His kids were his playtesters, and it just took on a life of its own. I would like to talk with him and see if this massive story in his head that clearly hasn't been all told yet, where at the point in this game series was that created, because there's no way in the beginning he had the ideas that are currently being set up.
Yeah, probably not. It probably took till way longer, especially when the theories started coming around.
Oh, of course, and I'd like to know if any of those theories helped guide him in an area where he was like, "Ooh, I wasn't thinking about that, but that is a good idea."
The way of getting ideas from others, man. It really helps.
SpongeBob being from Nickelodeon, are there any other Nickelodeon shows that you grew up with? I know you had mentioned that it was a little bit tougher to kind of, without cable, to get in touch with a lot of these cartoons. Were there any other shows that you saw at the time or even later on that you started getting attached to? Maybe not on SpongeBob's level, but something you were also enjoying?
Because I know it took me years to get, like, Nickelodeon and Nicktoons. I know it's, like, older, like, more smaller cartoons, like, what was it? El Tigre was a big one. I know there was one that was on Nicktoons that was completely horrible for a while. Or no, it had, like, a really low, Wild Grinders, if anybody remembers that one.
I think that's the Rob Dyrdek series.
Yeah, and I used to love that show, even though despite the fact of me rewatching it, it's absolute garbage, but it's cartoons like that from Nicktoons, Danny Phantom, and maybe even some Fairly Odd Parents too.
Oh, of course.
But mostly SpongeBob was always on top.
I mean, there's a reason why he's lasted 20 years. Not many cartoons can state that claim as well. A lot of them pretty much fizzle out after a few years.
Yeah, and SpongeBob's lucky that he has such a great appeal that he's been able to last this long.
I really think, of course, the writing in those first few seasons definitely helped keep him popular and keep him, in the public lexicon, those quotes. But I think it all boils down to his design is just so inviting, simple, and everybody, it's like super recognizable. It's just a yellow square. It really is. Yeah. And I love that you could draw SpongeBob in every country in the world, and kids who wouldn't even know English would be able to point to that and like know exactly who you're talking about.
He's such a recognizable character that he's up there with the best of the best. Like, hey, up with the Marios and Sonics of the world.
And even the Simpsons, which I've heard a few times now and during this podcast, how the Simpsons is like in other countries one of the biggest cartoons. And they're also yellow too. I think yellow just has something to do with it. It's just an inviting color, I suppose.
A powerful, inviting color.
A powerful and inviting color. Have you had now your experience online? You've been. I quickly glanced at your YouTube channel, and you certainly have a good amount of followers. Have you had any videos that you made that you really didn't think too much about, but then kind of people were really excited about that, or have you had any videos that you were really excited about, thought would catch fire, and just didn't with your fan base there? Or anything like that happen to you?
I know the most recent animation that you can see on my channel, another Eddsworld thing, because yes, I mostly do Eddsworld stuff. It was one that I really didn't think people would like often that much, because I was working on it for basically almost a year, on and off, and I was like, this one's not going to be that good. The next one will be better. And then everyone's like, whoa, this is so great! And it's like at 60K now, and I'm like, okay, that. I did not expect that.
No, I mean, I'm gonna dive into Eddsworld. You're definitely leaning me towards that cliff of like, nah, just look into it, go watch it, because I haven't heard much of Eddsworld, but I've heard of Eddsworld, but I've never seen anything from it.
Oh wait, you haven't?
No, where should I start? Where would be a good place for people to catch into this?
Because it's a very popular cartoon series on YouTube, and actually they're rebooting the series currently. They did like a short or two like a few months ago. It's been like years since the actual series has been picked back up. So it's been around since like 2009. The original creator is sadly no longer with us, of course, but they have like friends and family who are bringing the show back together, and it's actually really surprising because I actually didn't anticipate that they would actually do that. I
What?
have some friends who are on the crew, or at least I am acquaintances with people on the crew.
Well, that's incredible that even though the creator is gone, that they are still able to pick up those pieces. And sounds like, I mean, if you're a fan of this, and it seems like you're very positive, I'm sure a lot of other fans are positive for that as well.
Yeah, a good chunk of them at least. There's a few who are not too excited about it. It's like, it can get complicated, but at least the majority of them are pretty happy about it.
I mean, with every single reboot in the world, remake, no matter how good it can be, like, you're always going to have your critics that are like, that shouldn't have been done. But some of them are surprising. Like, sometimes you get a remake or a reboot that is so good that, yeah, it deserves to be talked about. It deserves to exist.
Yeah, unlike that SpongeBob reboot I hear about, or at least that one miniseries they think they're doing. I'm not a huge fan of that because it makes me have a lot of questions.
I certainly question things too. Now, I think you're talking about Camp Coral.
Yeah, I can't quarrel.
There seems to be this perception now. If you did, I've done some deep dives into the internet to try to find any pieces of information of things that Hillenberg has said, just because I'd like to form my own opinions. I don't, want to just follow the crowd. And if I do, I want to know that it's because of my own research. It seems like he definitely didn't want spin-offs just because of the oversaturation. But he had to have known it was existing because he was helping out on that third movie where a good chunk of it was a part of Camp Coral. So I'm sure he knew that show was going to exist, and even some have said, he definitely knew about it and gave it his blessing. And
Whoa.
I don't know.
I wasn't aware of that, actually.
Yeah,
I actually was unaware.
I'm not, well, because right after he passed, and this was the shame part, is that they didn't get to announce that show until after he passed, so it just looked bad. It just looked like, oh, he passed away, and now you're expanding SpongeBob. And I do know that I think even Vincent Waller, who works on the show, came out and said Steven never wanted spin-offs, always hated this idea. And that's where a lot of the anger came from. And I definitely think the oversaturation thing is a good point, because I don't think you could watch a day of Nickelodeon without watching 100 episodes of SpongeBob.
Yeah, so adding a spin-off would add more to it. It's more of just the concept itself, and just me thinking too hard about the timeline, really.
Oh yeah, I mean, definitely Sandy's inclusion. Now, I always argue that, do you remember every kid or friend that you had when you're a toddler or where you're young? No, so there is that possibility that Sandy was sent underseas for a little while and then brought back up, and then she went down when she was older, and her and SpongeBob just don't remember each other. Very big possibility, but we know that's not true because that was never the intention of the show. But yeah, the inclusion of Sandy is definitely weird with that world.
Yeah, it just really bothers me. I'm just a person who's like, hey, let's follow this timeline, and then certain episodes or certain things just knock the timeline out of whack, and it's like, what?
Now, it would have been weird to have all the main characters and to not have Sandy, so I think what they should have done is just make another character that Carolyn Lawrence could have voiced that would have been Sandy-esque, like another underwater creature that would have just been with this group, but then not necessarily make it Sandy. That
Yeah,
still would have been unfair for her not to be able to continue her character, but it is what it is. Like if it fails, it fails. If it doesn't, I just add it to the pile of SpongeBob that we have. This massive pile of entertainment.
it's just so much. And also, the only other complaint I have is like when I originally watched the third movie, it took like they really wanted to sell Camp Coral to us. Honestly, let's just say that. It's for those who haven't seen the movie. There's a good chunk of the movie that just dedicates itself to basically being a promo for the show, and that really took away from the pace of the movie and confused me. Despite the rest of the things that confused me in the movie, there's just a lot of things in there that confused me.
I didn't get to
Like,
see it yet. I was withholding to try to see it in theaters, and I know I could instantly just use I'm trying to a VPN to watch it through Netflix on another in another country, but I don't know. I was trying to wait to see if I could see it on the big screen, and I hope that they're able to try to get it in theaters at some point because I think it deserves to be seen on a bigger screen. But if not, I'm just going to wait to see it on Paramount Plus. The one thing that does bother me though is that the name change. I think in the movie Camp Coral is spelled with C's, but in the show it's spelled with K's. Like something like that bothers me immensely. I don't know why.
yeah, it's just
Where's the consistency, guys?
they just have no consistency. This is SpongeBob. We don't need that.
No, apparently we don't. No, not at all. Um, so you saw the third movie. Definitely, you would say the weakest of the three.
Yeah, most definitely. The animation style is absolutely gorgeous, of course, which is what makes me sad that it's really not good.
Does it
It's
at
like,
least have some good moments or jokes that you can think about? Like if somebody were to say, Sponge on the Run, you would think about that joke immediately.
oh yeah, there's a couple scenes that are pretty that I would say are pretty solid. It's just the majority of the movie is either slow paced, confusing, and certain how do I say it? Unnecessary cameos that literally add nothing to the plot, and sometimes certain parts of the story just go off the rails or get really confusing.
Oh goodness. I
And
hope
then
at least there's another chance for SpongeBob in theaters.
yeah, hopefully there's a better than this one. And also the ending's very anticlimactic. It's very unsatisfying to me.
Oh, that's a bummer to hear. Well, I kind of felt that the end of Sponge on the not Sponge on the Run, Sponge Out of Water was really weird. The rap battle between the dolphin and the seagulls, like it just kind of came out of nowhere. And it was just like a weird way to end the movie because they were singing the theme song, which I really liked. I'm like, oh, that's cute. And then it devolved into epic rap battles of history because they got those guys to come in and write it. And I don't know. I was sitting there like looking around, going, anyone else really like this? No.
Like I forgot they did that in the second movie. They just love rap because let's just say there's a little bit of rap in the third movie and it just comes out of nowhere. I don't understand it.
I'll give them credit that for each of these movies, they've tried a different kind of animation style, but I think that the core SpongeBob animation style is so beautiful itself that I was actually happy. I know a lot of people were upset seeing the second movie and how there wasn't a lot having to do with the 3D characters. I was happy that most of the movie was actually 2D animated because to me it's just so beautiful and expressive, and with that extra budget they can do so much more. Like back to the original SpongeBob movie, I love that first shot that you see outside of Squidward's house when you see the three homes on Conch Street. And because of the extra budget, they were actually able to make it look like it was really underwater, like some extra lighting effects. And it's so beautiful. And that kind of stuff, I'm just a sucker for it.
Yeah, honestly, and that's also why I like the animation of the third movie a lot. Is because it mixes the animation of Sponge Out of Water, kind of like because there were certain 3D models there, but it like makes it have this 2D kind of clay feel, and it's very expressive as well, more than the actual second one. So it's like 3D cartoon. I don't know how to say it. It's like
The way I explained it to people who were like, when that first trailer dropped and people were asking for my opinion and saying they thought it was weird, I watched the trailer a few times and I'm like, okay, it looks like the show, like the animation, but with just a 3D overlay.
Yeah,
which
basically.
I can appreciate because it reminds me of a lot of the animation style that Gendy Tartakovsky does over at Sony with the Hotel Transylvania movies, where he goes for the 2D kind of stretch and feel of older cartoons, but they just happen to be 3D.
Yeah, and that makes it look more expressive and it just flows much better. Especially the animation of the movie is really smooth all the time, and it's pleasing to look at. It's just the story itself and the movie itself is meh.
What scene were you able to secure in the Rehydrated project?
Oh, I got the scene. What was it? At the beginning where King Neptune comes into the restaurant and he's talking to SpongeBob. It was SpongeBob trying to ask if he could go find the crown for him. It's a like little section there.
Oh, that's one of my favorite scenes in the movie. So
Hey, what a coincidence!
it's just, yeah, like I love that scene because it sets up SpongeBob as a character for that movie. Like if you were not really that familiar with SpongeBob, I think that whole scene of him coming to work and trashing Mr. Krabs, but then immediately wanting to help him out. It's a wonderful scene. I'm glad you got that.
Yeah, SpongeBob can be mad, but then he can't be mad for too long. He cares about his friends and the people he loves too much.
That's the character of SpongeBob, and that's why we love him. So we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about Imitation Crabs.
Magic Conj, will I ever get to meet Tom Kenny?
Maybe someday.
Oh, so you're saying there's a chance. Okay. Should I tell fans of the show how they can support us?
Yes.
Goofy Goobers, supporting the show is shockingly easier than catching a blue jellyfish. Right from our anchor page, anchor.fm/SpongePod, you can find links to all of our social media and a support button if you happen to have a few extra clams. Also follow us on twitch.tv/SpongeBobPodcast, where it's not only the official home to our sister show, Video Bob Game Pants, it's also where I stream live drawings of various Nickelodeon characters and host the opportunity for commissions and giveaways. Lastly, the official merchandise store is now open at redbubble.com/people/SpongePod, where various designs will be uploaded inspired by our show, including our official logo, which is now available on a multitude of products like t-shirts, stickers, duvet covers, and even a shower curtain. This is a podcast by a fan, for fans, and will always be fan-driven. Any way you see fit on supporting our show is much appreciated. Thank you, and enjoy.
2,000 years later.
And we're back. So today's episode that we're going to go over is the Season 2 episode, Imitation Crabs. It first aired January 27th, 2001, and is the second part of the 24th episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, being a sister episode to Dying for Pie, which we talked about last week. It was written by Walt Dorn, Paul Tibbitt, and of course our own Mr. Lawrence, Plankton himself. This is by far now, and you would agree with this, I'm sure you've seen most of these or all of these original episodes. Season 2 is just a constant home run with every single episode that we're watching here.
Oh, I agree. It's one of my favorite seasons, to be honest. And Imitation Crabs is one of my favorite episodes.
I feel like with this podcast, for the entire of Season 2, I'm sure the listeners have heard me with all these episodes going, they're just getting better, and they're getting better, and look at this one. I'm waiting for that first one that I would say is a misstep, and I can't think of which episode that would be because they're all so good.
Yeah, it's hard to pick between seasons 1 through 3 because they're all really strong.
They are, and because I would say even the worst episode out of the first 3 seasons would be something that is still incredibly watchable and incredibly quotable.
Yeah, especially, I definitely agree.
The one thing that's notable about this that I want to mention before we dive into the episode, this is actually an important episode because it's the first time that we've seen the Krabby Patty secret formula appearing as a piece of paper inside of a bottle, which would then be, for the rest of the entire series, would be kind of the staple for the secret formula.
I was unaware of that. How did I not pick that up?
I was unaware about it either until I started looking. I usually will look into like the trivia of episodes, and every time I always find one that just makes me go like, wow, I didn't ever think about that. So here we have another classic Plankton episode. Plankton is one of my favorite villains of all time, and it's wonderful to see him fail because at this point it's just like what could you possibly try next? And in this situation we have Plankton creating a giant Mr. Krabs robot that looks like Mr. Krabs, but is very clearly a robot. Apparently not to SpongeBob, though, who can't see the difference between the two. But before we get there, any quick, like, we have this opening of Mr. Krabs and Plankton. Any thoughts here right in the opening of the episode?
I don't. Not too many notes, to be honest. But I just find the comment of, "Hey, are you SpongeBob SquarePants? Hey, you won $1 million. What's SpongeBob gonna do with that money?" To be honest, that's just one thing I always think.
$1 million with SpongeBob. I would like to think that if Mr. Krabs and Squidward found out that SpongeBob had $1 million, they would probably ask for money. Here's the thing. I think Mr. Krabs would lie about what he would need the money for, like if it was for a medical expense. Like, SpongeBob, I need $500,000 for this really rare surgery. I think SpongeBob would give it to him. I think Squidward would be absolutely honest in what he would want money from. Like, hey, could you buy me this new house away from you? Like, I think SpongeBob would do that. I think he would just help out his friends. And once Squidward or Mr. Krabs have their money, I'd like to think that he would give something to Sandy and even Patrick. I think he would just give out all of his money. I don't think money is a matter to him.
Yeah, he doesn't. He can't take their money. Grilling is his passion.
Well, he practically works for nothing anyway, so it does work out.
Yeah. I mean, he wonders how he pays rent. Oh wait, he lives in a pineapple.
Well, one that was like clearly just created from the ground, so he probably didn't have to really pay anything for that space, and maybe Patrick too. That's probably the annoying part for Squidward, is he lived in this nice Easter egg home, Easter Island egg, and no one was living next to him, and all of a sudden one day there was this pineapple that grew out of the ground, and then somehow a rock came there, and now he has these two annoying neighbors. I'd like to think that's what happened.
He's been paying for this house, living here nice and peacefully. Oh no, now he's got two annoying neighbors who won't leave him alone.
So a lot of the humor from this episode, so as we mentioned, Plankton tries to get the Krabby Patty secret formula through the means of a robot, tries to get the Krabby Patty. Of course, that robot doesn't work, but Plankton decides, well, that robot body doesn't work. I'm going to try a different robot body, and comes in with this Mr. Krabs robot. A lot of the humor of this episode comes from the fact that Mr. Krabs and the robot Krabs are kind of coming in and leaving at the same time, and it really confusing SpongeBob. Like Mr. Krabs asking SpongeBob to go to the back room for something, but then Imitation Krabs just coming out of nowhere, then asking SpongeBob to do something else, right when the real Mr. Krabs comes in. And for a good chunk of the episode, you get this back and forth, really, until both Mr. Krabs and the robot Krabs are then kind of pitted up against each other, in which SpongeBob ultimately chooses wrong, without even really knowing. But kudos to Plankton also. I got to give him credit. He knows a severe amount of information about Mr. Krabs.
Oh yeah, he does. And also, that's also a note that, one, why didn't Plankton take into account that Mr. Krabs would be a factor? Like, how long did he think that it would take to get the formula out of SpongeBob? Like, it probably would take a while for him to convince him, right? And probably a while to, like, get it written down, right?
I don't think he thought that the amount of hoops he would have to jump through to get the secret formula would be... I mean, kudos to him. He seemingly does everything that SpongeBob asks. But I look at this. Even the handshake routine is... sing the national anthem of Bikini Bottom while standing on one leg and balancing a glass of chocolate milk on the head. Number 2, eat 105 black licorice jelly beans through a straw. Which, by the way, every time... Now, according to this episode, SpongeBob and Mr. Krabs have to do this secret handshake every time they talk about the secret formula.
It's just bizarre to me that they have to do that every single time.
105 black licorice jelly beans. Launch yourself out of a cannon into a chair sitting down. Eat a plate of spaghetti and meatballs, then sing a weird rhyme consisting of ravioli and the Great Barrier Reef. That is a massive handshake, which I think that whole ravioli part, that whole rhyme has just been seared in my brain, and anytime I think of this episode, I can't get it out.
Just ravioli, ravioli. Give me the formioli.
Another part of this episode, it reuses live action footage of a burger from Plankton, the episode Plankton. This time, though, it's just kind of the shot of the burger. It's not actually being made as it does show in that episode.
I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, crazy little one-off things that they have there. So this episode does reveal us what the Bikini Bottom national anthem is, which is something I wish they would have revisited at least one point in the show. Unless they have, and it's from an episode I haven't seen, but it's the only time I've ever heard the national anthem.
Yeah, 'cause I don't think I've ever heard it again, actually. That would be nice to see again.
I really liked... This probably might be one of, if not my favorite Plankton episodes, because as I've mentioned before, the lengths that Plankton is willing to go through just to get the secret formula is, I gotta give him credit. Like, even though he is evil and he's in the wrong and he's trying to steal, the amount of effort just for that one steal is you gotta give him a hand. Like, at some point, I think most people would tap out trying to get the secret formula, but Plankton seemingly doesn't want to try to create better food. He just wants to steal from Mr. Krabs.
He's just so determined. And also a note that in this episode, it really shows the type of it's the way SpongeBob's intelligence works. Like, certain episodes, he's way too anxious, and every small little thing he notices everything, and he's super anxious and paranoid. Like in Crabborg, like he was just super attentive and anxious about everything. And then certain episodes, he just has 0 brain cells, and he just doesn't notice anything. He's so blissfully unaware. It's the dynamic of SpongeBob. Sometimes he has a brain cell, and sometimes he doesn't.
Well, speaking of Crabborg too, he was able to convince Squidward of his paranoia, which you would think Squidward would be the one to just completely shut out SpongeBob, but he came in at the right time, gave Squidward the right information that made Mr. Krabs look really terrible in a lot of weird, awkward ways. Those just like one-off moments.
He got Squidward to call the Navy, even though the Navy is now apparently being run by the robots, as SpongeBob says. I still love that. It's like, they got the Navy, guys!
So there is the climax of this episode comes down to Mr. Krabs and the robot crabs being caught in the same room by SpongeBob, going through a complete gauntlet of information, trivia about Mr. Krabs' life, with apparently the original Mr. Krabs not knowing the last question here, that causes him then to be pushed out with a container of fries just out into the ocean, just for apparently somebody with an incredibly long reach coming down to the ocean trying to eat Mr. Krabs. During this, though... Oh, what were you going to say?
At least now we know that on Wednesdays, the Krabby Patty's 99 cents.
Yeah, which is incredibly cheap. I feel like, with how many people seem obsessed with the Krabby Patty, that it would at least be like a $5 burger.
Yeah, but that's pretty cheap, even for Mr. Krabs, honestly.
Yeah, he has some very cheap... getting through the first season, I completely forgot about a few moments in the show that really showed that, yes, he is a businessman, but he wasn't as greedy as he would eventually become in the show. I mean, he had the whole free salad bar in Culture Shock, which was like, when that show opened and I was watching it again for this podcast, I knew it existed. I knew that there was a salad bar in this episode, but just sitting back and thinking, wow, a free salad bar? That's a Mr. Krabs idea?
And same guy who said that $101 for a Krabby Patty with cheese.
Hey, look, if the king of the ocean was coming to my restaurant, I would try to bump the prices up a little bit. Although that was an incredible amount. I don't think King Neptune would have ever fallen for that.
Unless he was really done, which probably not.
So we have the whole end of this is basically a penny on the ground that Mr. Krabs was apparently chasing throughout the show. One of my favorite jokes is when the penny is rolling on the ground, and it was a way of Plankton to get Mr. Krabs out of the room. Mr. Krabs starts catcalling the penny as if he was a construction worker and there was a woman walking by on the sidewalk. It just makes me laugh. Like, catcalling, of course, in 2021, definitely not acceptable in society. But hey, if you want to catcall a penny and you want to be complimentary to a penny rolling on the ground, by all means, go ahead and do it. It's hilarious.
Hey, don't change what you do.
Oh, I like it. I appreciate a good pun. So yeah, SpongeBob ends up finding the penny, who gives it to Mr. Krabs in his coin slot, which happens to be the Krabs robot. Plankton seemingly adding a coin-operated self-destruct mechanism on this robot, which says it's going to explode in 10 seconds, but if you actually count, it explodes, I believe, at 12 seconds.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
I counted.
Yeah, I just wanted to see it because I always felt like it went a little bit longer when the actual explosion happens. Apparently, though, if you pay attention to the storage room, I think this is also the first episode that we really see the storage room of the Krusty Krab. I don't think we've ever gone in that room before. But
Yeah,
apparently,
never go back to it.
apparently in this room, he has Mr. Krabs has chum sauce,
I never noticed that.
which seems incredibly weird because a chum in general is obviously just kind of fish guts, which is
And you don't want that in your sauce.
Yeah, you don't want that in sauce, and I don't know why he even has that there. I mean, if I could come up with any excuse for Mr. Krabs in this situation, I would like to think that he has chum sauce just in the slight chance that the sea dwellers of Bikini Bottom become obsessed with the chum bucket. So that's kind of like an emergency tactic where, like, oh, they're eating at the chum bucket? All right, we have chum sauce and Krabby Patties now.
Yeah, or even worse, that the chum sauce he steals from Plankton to put into the Krabby Patties. That would be a super big 180.
Absolutely. This episode also, SpongeBob mentions that the duplication of the formula is punishable by law, and that basically the Krabby Patty secret formula is patented, which legally means, and I don't know if they meant this, I believe that you could look up any patent in the United States. So if it is patented, that means that it should be public to be able to find out what the secret formula is.
See, things like that I never even thought of, because I thought about the punishable by law being like, hey, Plankton's actually breaking the law, but we already knew that. But I didn't think about actually it being patented.
Yeah, I think that's just, I really think that that's not true. I think it's misdirection. Because if it's a secret, I think Mr. Krabs tells SpongeBob these things to just like keep SpongeBob on guard. Like, SpongeBob, just so you know that this formula is patented, and if anybody copies it, it's punishable by law. Like, don't make a copy of it. And I think then SpongeBob takes that information and runs with it.
Just like, I will tell no one. And do you ever think that Squidward knows the secret formula?
I kind of like, now this, yes and no. I don't think there is a secret formula. I think the fact that so many people have mentioned the quote-unquote secret formula, I like to give Binging with Babish's idea of the secret formula a go, where it's just it's a marketing thing. It's just you're telling people there's a secret formula in there, and you're getting them obsessed with this when there really isn't. I think it's just a regular burger that doesn't have anything extra to it.
I actually think I saw a film theory about that, actually, that was like, there's no real secret formula.
Yeah, it brought me back to if you've ever seen Kung Fu Panda, when Poe's dad tells him, like, you know what the secret ingredient in my soup is? It's nothing. Like, there's nothing in there. I just tell people there's a secret ingredient because it kind of keeps them coming.
Yeah, you gotta keep them coming with something. It's like, how do I sell this very mediocre burger? Hey, I say there's a secret formula.
Yeah, you mentioned that. I mean, we never see SpongeBob, like, we never see the meat. I mean, we've seen boxes of patties, but we've never seen him add anything to those patties. So, I mean, even going back to the very first episode of the show, SpongeBob goes right into the kitchen, dives right into a box, and starts shooting patties right out of his eyes. So I don't think there's anything secret in there. And Mr. Krabs is a businessman. He's not going to want to spend extra money on some secret ingredient.
Yeah, and it's like when you see the packets of patties, it's like ground beef or something. Like, it's already prepared, you just put it in a patty. And how is SpongeBob able to just go in there and bake patties when he hasn't even worked there before as well?
He's been practicing every day. But you brought up another point. That's another question I've always thought about the show. Like, as far as the meat in these patties, like what is in them? Is it cow patties that they're getting from the oversea? Is it another kind of meat from an undersea creature? That to me is a more compelling question than whatever the secret formula is.
Yeah, because I think I've seen some theories where it's like like dead fish or the things like that. Where that would be cannibalism.
Well, I mean, hey, fish have to eat underwater. They all have their own, their ecosystem. What are they willing to eat if there's nothing else around? I have no idea. The fact that he gets them shipped, I like to think that they're exotic. Like, if people are obsessed this much over the Krabby Patty, it's got to be something that they've never tasted before.
And that makes me think about a later episode. I forgot what later season it is. There's like, because it's possible for different types of food to hit Bikini Bottom that are actually toxic. Because like, there was that one restaurant that came with like these drinks that everyone was loving, and they turned out to be like some sort of toxic sludge.
No, I think it was the shake one. I think I think it was like a green shake.
Yeah, so it's not out of the question that they would use illegal practices to sell their food or sell different types of toxic food that they just haven't picked up yet because everyone loves it.
Yeah, for the amount of money that Mr. Krabs has, I can definitely see him cutting corners to try to get some cheap meat underwater to sell at his restaurant.
No one really checks it because
No.
they love it too much. They're like, what could be wrong?
I just can't. I don't think it's any undersea creature. I really think it's like the fact that so many people are obsessed, or even like Squidward having never had a Krabby Patty before. It's got to be a meat that they don't have access to. So I feel like it's just got to be cow beef. Like, that's just got to be a thing.
Yeah, because the only people who don't like Krabby Patties have never tasted one. And because we haven't tasted one because we don't have this type of meat.
Oh, hey, look, we may have had Krabby Patties this whole time. If it is cow beef, we have access to the Krabby Patty without even knowing it.
Just one day there's a SpongeBob restaurant that opens up, everyone's going to buy a Krabby Patty. Just like, we must know what it tastes like.
Well, I've seen there's some restaurant, I think it's in Indonesia. There's somewhere in the world that somebody built basically a Krusty Krab. It's as good as you probably could do on your own, but I've always thought that Universal Studios, they do these wonderful... That's probably the thing that excites me about theme parks is when they kind of immerse you into the world. Like, if you go down to Universal and you go to Hogwarts and the Harry Potter area, it makes you feel like you're in the movies. And they have a Simpsons area that is practically the same. But right next to the Simpsons area, they have a SpongeBob Square store. And it's massive. And I've always thought, why are these people not building a replica size Krusty Krab and just selling Krabby Patties, which are just burgers? Like, I would pay a lot of money to go down there and go eat at the Krusty Krab and have, quote unquote, a Krabby Patty.
Honestly, I would too. Just kelp shake, kelp fries, just the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, just make sure the people, if I ask for salt at the front counter, just have them tell me no, and have them tell me no again if I ask them to check.
We have salt all around us. This is the sea.
All the food is salty. You don't need anything extra. Well, before we, I do want to thank you again for being on the show. I really appreciate it from one SpongeBob fan to another. Before we go, though, do you have any social media accounts that you'd like the fans, the listeners, to kind of check your stuff out on? I know we already mentioned your YouTube channel, and we're going to have all the links down in the episode description, but anything you'd like people to specifically know or catch your stuff at?
Oh, of course, because I know I'm mostly active on Twitter at Star Kingo 2468, to Star Kingo on YouTube, and I also have an Instagram, Star Kingo. I mostly just reside there. I used to have a DeviantArt, but I unfortunately don't anymore. But yeah, if you want to check me out, you can go to my YouTube, Twitter, or Instagram. And thank you for having me on, man.
Oh, no problem, King. Thank you for coming on, and I am sure we will have you on a future episode. Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much.
Mail time.
And that sound means it's time for the Snail Mailbag. If you would like to write into the Snail Mailbag, you can. You can email me at snailmail@euphonics.com, UFONYX. SpongeBobSquarePantsMovieRehydrated.com. Send me your questions, your comments, your concerns, or your anecdotes. I would love to hear them. This one is a bit of a refreshing question. It actually challenges me a little bit on things I've said in the past on the show, and I actually like the chance to elaborate. This is from Lauren from the Boston area. Eric, I've been listening to your show now for a few months, and I've noticed that you don't have very kind things to say about current Nickelodeon. I've also noticed a few times you've mentioned that you don't currently have cable. How could you have such a negative view of today's Nick when you don't watch it? Now, that certainly is an incredible question. And when I first got that, I was a little taken aback, but then I realized, yeah, maybe I was a bit hard on current Nickelodeon. And no, I don't currently watch it. But I guess my negativity stems from the lineup of Nicktoons that at some point Nickelodeon stopped giving their full attention and full effort on, in my opinion. I feel like I can track this back to Cat Scratch, which, if you start looking, was really the first Nicktoon to be canceled a bit earlier than expected. But unlike Invader Zim, didn't have a massive fan base. It was just kind of came and went. And when I went through the list and going through, there were some shows I was shocked that still had a pretty high episode count compared to earlier Nicktoons. Shows like Sanjay and Craig had a lot of episodes I was unaware of, and even Fanboy and Chum Chum had a decent amount. But it felt at some point that instead of sticking behind these cartoons as hard as they did in the 90s and in the early 2000s, they would come, it would air for like one season on Nickelodeon, get buried in ratings to SpongeBob, which was on the air all the time, and then it would get moved over to Nicktoons Network. It was kind of like a death sentence for all Nicktoons. And as far as I know, the only Nicktoon to really survive on the air besides SpongeBob has been the Loud House. So, not that these other shows have to have 100 episodes, have to have a movie, have to do anything like that, but a show like Harvey Beaks, was that given its due credit on Nickelodeon before it was moved over to Nicktoons Network? I don't know. I wasn't watching. So seeing all these shows treated like that and seeing the Nicktoons brand not be as sacred as it once was, like being a Nicktoon was, in my opinion, being a Nicktoon was a big deal. Having a Nicktoon was a big deal. And I just feel at some point Nickelodeon not was treating it the way that they should have. As far as their live action ventures go, I of course have not been watching any live action shows on Nickelodeon since iCarly was on. But Henry Danger has still been fairly popular. The Thundermans was fairly popular. They're currently having Danger Force on there. So it's not to be negative on current Nickelodeon, but hey, when it's actual news that there's going to be a single day that Nickelodeon doesn't air an episode of SpongeBob, and it's the first time in 14 years, like when that's newsworthy, to me that's a problem. I've been in situations over the last 5 years where I've had access to cable, and Nickelodeon is just all SpongeBob. Like 90% of it is SpongeBob, and the other, like 5% is Loud House and live action shows. 5% each, of course. Of course, with time, everything changes. The channel is not going to feel the same 10 years from now than it does right now, and even 20 years from now. Like, things are going to change. If you currently watch Nickelodeon Live and you enjoy everything you watch, or mostly everything you watch, I'm happy for you. I generally am. I would like to think that some of those shows would still offer some sort of entertainment for me if I were watching them, if I gave them a chance. If I ever get to watching other shows, shows like Breadwinners and Harvey Beaks didn't get to catch on television, but being so close to animation, you'd hear the news. Oh, it aired 15 episodes and then it's moving over to Nicktoons Network, which is a little extreme. Usually they at least get through one season on Nickelodeon before getting moved over. But yeah, completely no disrespect. That's basically where my points kind of came from when it comes to current Nickelodeon. But I appreciate the question. Thank you very much, Lauren, for sending that in. And that is this week for the Squarecast. Once again, if you would like to write in, snail mail at uphonics.com, UFONYX redbubble.com. And we will catch you next time right here on I'm Ready, a SpongePod Squarecast.
Don't listen to him, SpongeBob. Remember, ravioli, ravioli, give me the formuoli.
I'm ready!
Magic Conj, will I ever get to meet Tom Kenny?
Maybe someday.
Oh, so you're saying there's a chance. Okay. Should I tell fans of the show how they can support us?
Yes.
Goofy Goobers, supporting the show is shockingly easier than catching a blue jellyfish. Right from our anchor page, anchor.fm/SpongePod, you can find links to all of our social media and a support button if you happen to have a few extra clams. Also follow us on twitch.tv/SpongeBobPodcast, where it's not only the official home to our sister show, Video Bob Game Pants, it's also where I stream live drawings of various Nickelodeon characters and host the opportunity for commissions and giveaways. Lastly, the official merchandise store is now open at redbubble.com/people/SpongePod, where various designs will be uploaded inspired by our show, including our official logo, which is now available on a multitude of products like t-shirts, stickers, duvet covers, and even a shower curtain. This is a podcast by a fan, for fans, and will always be fan-driven. Any way you see fit on supporting our show is much appreciated. Thank you, and enjoy.